Hi, I'm Dr. Rudy Cashman. Thanks for watching this show. As you know, I've been running the show for at least 3 years or so, and it's about wellness. I'm trying to teach you how to prevent, stop, and reverse most chronic diseases. 80% of the illnesses that we go to the hospital about, frankly, can be prevented, stopped, reversed through lifestyle changes. What we eat, what we breathe, what we drink, and how much stress we have, for example. It's a wonderful opportunity. This is a good news show. This is a good news show. And today, this is really the most important of all the things I think I've been speaking about in the past. You may not even realize, what is it? Epigenetics. I mean, that sounds very scientific. No, please listen, this is not going to delve down into mathematics and physics. In the end, you'll realize this is very simple, but it has such great importance to our lives. Epi means upon our genetic structure. That's instinct. So, you know, we've heard before, you are what you eat. But you learn in this show, you're more than that. You are what you eat, and you are what your parents ate, and what your grandparents ate, and how they behaved, and how it affected your genes, and how it was altered through epigenetics. You're not just stuck with what you inherited. You can indeed, through extensions of the genes called telomeres, they've been writing about this about 15, 20 years, you can change your future. You can make it worse, you can make it better. What an interesting road we're going to be traveling upon. We have to go through a little bit of science. Of course, every one of our cells, 70 trillion cells, in the nucleus, there's DNA and chromosomes. We have 46 chromosomes, 23 from the man, 23 from the woman. We have 46 chromosomes. We have about 30,000 genes, and I explained to you what they are. The chromosomes are the long strands. We know that they're shaped like a helix, and were described through X-ray and radioisotopes, and now through electron microscope by Watson and Crick in 1954, and we have 30,000 genes, which are the ladders between these chromosomes, remember, like a helix, and there's ladders between them, and these ladders are made out of our genes, 30,000 of them, but it's done in a code of only about 4 different proteins, A, G, C, T, adenosine, guanine, cysteine, and thymine. Permutations of those 4, about 6 billion of them, okay, determine our genetic future. Their expression of them, their expression of these genes. And it's like Lego. You know, Lego has got about a few parts, but you can make about anything out of it. I think this is a great comparison. And as I already mentioned, so this is a code. This is the code that determines our future. It's our genome. This is how nature, God, whatever you want to call it, is doing it to us. So, and the good news is, to some people, bad news, this genetic code, these 4 proteins that are permeated 6 billion different ways, can be affected through telomeres, the end of the chromosomes, okay, through food, drink, our environment, what we're breathing, for example, our pollutants, and our social interactions. Yes, they can be altered, especially so while we're still in the placenta, while we're children. As much epigenetics has much more effect on at a very low cellular stage. Epigenetics in cancer are related. Dr. Katz, K-A-T-Z, Dr. David Katz published a book, 35 years in public health, called Disease Proof Yourself, okay? What he's saying on the cover, which I totally agree with, is based on science, 60% of cancer 60% of cancer can be prevented through proper lifestyle, what you eat, what you drink, your environment, what you're breathing, whether you're smoking, your social interactions, your stresses. 93% of type 2 diabetes can be avoided. 80% of vascular disease can be avoided through proper lifestyle. It's great news. Even papers came out recently that through epigenetic changes, that if you get cancer spread throughout the body, cancer's sugar feeder, if you change the way, whether you exercise or not, what you're eating, what you're breathing, whether you're dropping bad habits, what you're putting on your fingers, on your forks, and whether you exercise, some metastatic cancer is reversible through epigenetics. The biggest cause of cancer is not that you're born with it in your genetic structure, as you know, we read about this famous actress recently had her breast removed because she inherited genetics from her parents. There are cases like that, but you would wonder whether through epigenetic changes she couldn't have reversed some of those statistics. I mean, it's something needs to remain to be seen, but it gives hope to cancer patients. They must be told that you can, through behavioral changes, what you're eating, that you can increase your chances. This is good news. I don't think this news is spread around enough myself. Where did they find out about these things? After the Second World War, this was very interesting. There was a part of the Netherlands where people starved to death. The Germans, people in the Netherlands, they shut down the trains. The Germans get so upset. It was near the end of the war. They starved the people. They did. 22,000 people starved. Still, there were some pregnancies, and they found, for example, that the infants in the uterus, because they keep very good statistics there, the ones that were of fairly normal weight end of the 9 months, in the future, those children grew to be very healthy, were not overweight, but the children in the uterus, the infants in the uterus that were underweight at the end of their pregnancy, a lot of times turned out to be very obese. And what happened was their genetic structure was changed through epigenetics because they thought they were starving in the uterus, so whenever they were eating after they were born, they would store the fat to stay alive. That's epigenetic changes. These studies are done very carefully, and they realized that genes can indeed be influenced by something, by the telomeres, and you're not just expressed of the genetic structure that you're born with. It's very interesting. 22,000 people starved, and they based this on birth weights. A lot of boys that entered the Army, when they found very low birth weight, that they were too obese to join the Army, for example. This is very interesting studies. So how, in cancer, for example, can you epigenetically change your genetic structure? It's called through methylation, where you add CH3 to it, and this shuts off genes. So these permeation of these proteins, what they do, they send a message to your body how to make proteins. This is the protein messenger, but that can be changed through methylation, CH3. They turn some of the genes off, so they develop differently. Different proteins are developed. And some turn the genes on. These are called histones. These are called histones. We'll get through the chemistry here pretty quick. So your genes can be turned on or off depending on your epigenetics. Certainly, there are some people that are born with some mutations, permanent changes in the genes, and genetic diseases. But that's a small minority of them. That's a small minority of the majority of things that we're getting, cancers and diseases we think are totally expressed by genes, actually it had come on through epigenetics, the behavior of the grandparents, the parents, what a mother and father ate before the eggs fertilized, what the mother ate, things she was exposed to during the pregnancy, and what the child is fed right after birth through the teenage years can affect their health tremendously. Remember, DNA, is called desoxynucleic acid, and we're talking about mainly about nucleic acids and permeations of them, 6 billion of them through the alterations of 4 proteins, AGCTs, combinations of them. Remember, I spoke about the helix and Watson and Crick. I remember visiting the Charles Darwin Museum in Down, England years ago, when there was a little teenage girl standing next to the helix, which really is what was the next step from in the explanation of evolution. But they didn't have their names on them, so I asked this little English girl if she knew the name. She did, and I gave him the name because I said, that'll be on your test. I thought that was it'll be on your test if there was any teenagers watching here. So Darwin really was a scientist, of the 1800s, 1850s. Then Mendel came along and told us about genes in plants and hybridization. And then Watson and Crick really are the story of this, of the last century, 1954, where they first demonstrated that science is marching on. So we're speaking really about a code, a genetic code that determines your future. And we only have about 20 amino acids, but permeations of them can produce the different proteins, the heart cells, the liver cells, the kidney cells. They differentiate. But as this is occurring, there has to be a messenger. And it is these epigenes that are the messengers and can change these cells. They're messengers. There's protein in muscles, in hair, cartilage, skin. So DNA is then transcribed into RNA. You heard the term RNA. And that is really the messenger that determines what protein develops. But that can be affected by the things we spoke about, our diet, our environment, the amount of stress that we have. So there are many permeations of these proteins. It's like a control panel. So the epigenes are the modifiers of our genetic expression. They modify things. For example, let's lighten up a little bit and speak about baseball a minute here. Remember the story of Canseco, the famous athlete who was taking a lot of steroids. It was in the news all the time. And he was epigenetically changing the RNA expression of the muscle cells because he was trying to build up big muscles, but he forgot that it was affecting the hormone testosterone mainly. That had other effects. And then he wrote books about it, and he exposed Mark McGuire, and that was a bad story. So he was trying to change his epigenetic gene structures through taking outside hormones, changing the message. And what the environment can do, the outside environment can do, make you worse, it can make you better, is turning on or off silent genes that is sitting there that not going to express themselves, but you cause them to express themselves by what you do. So it's very interesting. And remember, the telomeres, where it occurs, they're the extension of your chromosome. And we talk about telomere transferase, an enzyme that does that. Let's speak a little bit about twins. Twins come from the same egg, and then you wonder, can they be changed epigenetically? You notice they don't call them identical twins anymore. They call them zygotic twins. As soon as the egg divides, okay, they're twins at that point. But then when they examined twins, compared their chromosome structure from an infant to when they're 50 years old, these identical twins are not identical anymore. They may look fairly alike, but they've been changed epigenetically. They're going to get different diseases. One's maybe eating a bad diet, one's a good diet, one's had a great environment, another one has a poor environment, one is smoking and the other one's not smoking, the one's eating the bad foods, the other one's eating the good foods. And they've been, through epigenetics, they've been changed. Interesting story, because it applies to us. It applies to us. So what we do can affect us. We can indeed change our future. Our genes are not the future, certainly with some exceptions, through mutations which are a step before that, okay? For that. So that's a very interesting story. What's expressed in us so we're not just what we eat, okay? We're what our mother and father ate. We are what the mother ate in intrauterine development, what our parents ate, what our grandparents ate. Nutrition is the biggest effector of epigenetics. Well, that's kind of interesting. Yeah, they're the biggest effector of epigenetics. So it's changing. We're not just what we eat. There's more to that than that. And there's especially amount of programming going in us epigenetically when you were as a fetus in the uterus. Is the mother smoking? Is she taking drugs? Is she eating a lot of sugary foods? What is the atmosphere? What is the mother breathing in? Will epigenetically change the infant. So it is extreme. So education begins at conception? That's what everybody says. No, before conception, and even before that, because the potential parents, what their habits are, what their parents' habits were, what their grandparents' habits were, they've now found that epigenetically, 2 or 3 generations back affects the gene structure. And you tend to lose that 2 or 3 generations going forward, okay? Those changes are not permanent. Most of your gene structure is permanent, but the epigenetic changes begin 2 or 3 generations ago, and they last another 2, 3 generations, becoming less and less as the years go by. Very interesting, okay? Isn't this very interesting? So, but now we also speak, you'll find this even more fascinating. You'll find it even more fascinating. There's something out there called biomathematics. You know, take a walk sometime. Look at the plants. Have a look at the plants. See how beautiful and symmetrical they are. I took a walk this morning. I knew the show was coming up and it is very windy, but the plants look so symmetrical, so beautiful. That's based on something called biomathematics. There was a plastic surgeon named Marquardt who years ago really started studying this. He went to museums and ancient architecture, and he studied that and finds out there's something that was discovered years ago, maybe a couple thousand years ago, because some of the structures that the ancients built are still standing because they understood this formula. It's called Fibonacci numbers. They use it even in stock trading. Fibonacci numbers are like 1 and 1 is 2. It's always you add the last 2. Keeps on going on infinity. Then they talk about the golden triangle. It's in nature. So the genetic structure, okay, genetic structure, that's in nutrient-dense foods of color. You can add mushrooms, you can add onions. They have a mathematical configuration, okay? When you eat that, that affects the genetic structure of your body. Okay, the genes of your food affect the genes of your body, and the reason America leads the world in heart disease, strokes, and type 2 diabetes is because the food we're eating is not genetically consistent with our genetic structures. These foods have been invented, hybridized, genetically changed, affected by pollutants, hormones, insecticides, and it's changing our body, and our body's coming out as a chronic disease. There's tremendous symmetry in nature. What was I speaking about when I took my walk? Everything is so symmetrical. You can bring that symmetry which is definition of beauty, symmetry, to you. And I exemplified it in one of my other PowerPoints. You can go to cashmanhealth.com. Look at a couple of pictures I got on there of two females who lost over 100 pounds. Comparatively, the original picture and the follow-up picture, they look like movie stars. It's not just their weight. Because they eat nutrient-dense food now, they have changed their body. It's become a lot more symmetrical, and I mean it. Look at the pictures you see. They're just gorgeous. And this is very well described in a wonderful book called Deep Nutrition by Catherine Shanahan. I encourage you to read this book. I encourage you to read this book. And there's pictures in there. I totally believe that. And it's done through epigenetics. It's done through then you can turn around, eat fat, salt, and sugar, and you can go the other way. But here's if you want to look good, feel good, avoid diseases, switch to a nutrient-dense diet. Don't have to be 100%, 80%, okay? And those diseases we spoke about will be stopped, prevented, and can even be reversed. Remember the pictures I showed you? Living proof, living proof. And remember we spoke about methylation, how cancer is produced by eating improper diet, not exercising, under stress all the time. That's not all of cancer, but that's at least 60% of cancer, turning genes off and on and off. The methylation turns genes off that could affect you, okay? Histones turn genes on, so you can go either way about them. You know, you hear about supplements and taking vitamins, but taking supplements is fine. It's fine, and some need it, like B12. You know, if you don't get B12, you increase rate of meningomyocele, cysts coming out of your spine, and paralysis and bladder problems, and water on the brain. I treat a lot of those, being a having been a neurosurgeon for 44 years, so we take B12. That's an isolated vitamin. There are diseases like that where you need to take an isolated vitamin, but it's best to get your vitamins and minerals, your 12 vitamins and 14 minerals and 25,000 phytochemicals through food, because it's a symphony, their mosaic, their rainbow of interaction that lead to good health. And when you listen to my epigenetic story, that makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. Nature, the foods we're talking about, okay, they fought off the viruses, the funguses, the bacteria in the earth. When you eat them, that's what you're getting. You're getting their genetic structure, okay? If you're eating beef, for example, and it was raised on a cattle farm where they fed it insecticides and hormones and carbon products and fat out of a trough for 150 days while they're in a cage, and then you eat it, well, what you eat is what that animal ate. So eating a lot of bad fats, omega-6s, very unhealthy thing to do, okay? So if you're going to eat some meat, maybe I said 20%, okay? It should be from an organic farm, for example. Obesity is an epigenetic story. It's an epigenetic story. Our body is storing the bad fats, and people look at fat today. Fat is a gland. I'm sorry to say that, but fat makes 20 nasty chemicals, cancer factors, IGF, insulin growth factors. So if you're eating a lot of bad fats, the omega-6 fats, fish from a pond instead of the ocean, meat from a concentrated animal feeding organization, not an organic farm, you get a lot of omega-6s, the essential fatty acids. We need some of them. We need some fats, okay? And some are good fats. The omega-3s, the essential fatty acids, there's some fat in every one of your cells in your body, okay? And yes, there's some fat in every cell in your body. Every leaf in the world has some alpha-linolenic acid in it, essential fatty acid, ALA. That's a good fat. So you need to learn about good fats and bad fats. Omega-3s are good fats. So, but to me, the biggest cause of health problems is sugar. We'll speak more about that. It's sugar. It's not the fat. It's about 20% fat, but the rest is the sugar that's making us sick. So neglected infants, because of lack of oxytocin, a hormone, tend to be neglected mothers. Again, that's through epigenetics. We know that. We know that from here, let's face it, the United States, but especially in the old communist countries. Romania, for example, they find these orphanages with totally abandoned children, and they were never able, even with love and good mothers, very tough to turn the situation around because they had been epigenetically changed. So you see how important it is that we raise our infants properly, that we eat properly while the child is in the uterus. But I mentioned even before mom and dad, if they decide to have a baby, very important what their habits were because of through epigenetics. So pick your mate carefully, okay? Of course, that doesn't always occur. And so our DNA really acts like a giant brain. It's a huge computer. It's like a giant brain, and it works through our genes. And DNA, only 2% is used to do these calculations, determine what a body is going to be like. 98% is called junk DNA. It's not junk, though. That DNA, that 98% is what is used epigenetically through millions and billions of permeations of AGCT, those 4 proteins I mentioned, to express themselves in your body. 98% of your DNA is used epigenetically. Wow! We need to scream it from the mountaintops because that's affected by what we do. So you must participate in your health care. On my wellness wheel, which I speak about sometimes, number 1 is you must participate in your health care. They can do to you no matter what, but the majority of your future is going to be determined by yourself. You must gain some knowledge, okay? So what am I recommended? 80% plant-based diet, okay? Eat all you want, okay? I even speak about Rudy's plate, which I'll hold up for you, which is, I didn't name it after myself. That's Rudy from Notre Dame. But I mention it because what I'm saying is half your plate could be non-starchy vegetables, okay? That means no complex carbs in it. Just eat all you want, no limit, okay? Then about a quarter or the other half of the other half is lean proteins, okay? There can be some meat products, but make sure it's not from organic farm. Know where the meat came from. Ask the waiter, where's this from? To make sure it's not too full of cancer factors, IGF factors that are found a lot in meat. Meat's full of cholesterol, although I'll tell you in a minute, cholesterol I don't worry about. It's the low-density cholesterol that I worry about. And it's the fish from a farm or a pond. In the pond, they feed it soybean oils and carbon products to fatten the fish because that's how they get paid. And then you eat the darn thing. You got to ask, is this from the ocean or is it from a farm? Okay? I know in town here, I know the restaurants where it's from a farm or from the ocean. You'd be surprised sometimes who the restaurant is. You would think those fancy restaurants get all the fish from Alaska. I got something to tell you. And then the other quarter, whole grains or starchy vegetables. That's vegetables with complex carbohydrates in them that don't have their bran and germ removed, okay? So they're not stripped of the nutrients, the vitamins, for example. And lean proteins can include nuts. I highly recommend eating an ounce of nuts a day. Satisfy the appetite for the complex carbs, full of fiber, and are very healthy for you. My friend Dr. Furman, who wrote that book, Eat to Live, he eats 2 ounces of nuts a day. I don't recommend that, but he looks great. An ounce a day. You know, I have some in my car to relieve hunger after work, so I don't overeat it during a big dinner. And use water. Don't use sugary drinks. Sugary drinks is 50% of obesity. Let me tell you something about sugar a minute. sugar, sucrose, table sugar. Hardly anybody knows this. I talked to a med student who was going to graduate in a week from med school with an A average. She did not know the chemistry of sugar, okay? I asked her. And sucrose, table sugar, is 50% glucose. That goes to the bloodstream, raises the insulin level. 20% goes to the liver, 20% goes to the brain. The rest goes to the glycogen energy storage in your muscles. Okay, when you run a marathon, that's what you're using, glycogen. The other 50%, what's that? What is it? Rarely do I have somebody who has the answer. I don't always know myself. It's fructose, the same stuff as in fruit. Okay? 2 or 3 pieces of fruit is okay. 35 grams of fructose a day is okay. But Americans are eating 50 to 100 grams of fructose. Fructose goes to the bloodstream, doesn't raise the insulin level, doesn't turn the appetite off, goes to the liver, sucks your energy molecule, ATP, adenosine triphosphate, goes to a fatty liver and makes very low density LDL. It's that LDL that burrows in your blood vessels and causes arterial and atherosclerosis, your 300,000 miles of capillary blood vessels. That's what causes atherosclerosis. It's not the fat. Maybe 20% of the fat, the omega-6s, can do it similarly, inflame your body. So the VLDL inflames your body. So my last book coming out shortly on Amazon is Your Body on Fire. But we don't see the fire. It's a slow kindling fire. We don't see it. But when you, for example, take a type 2 diabetic, which we have about 40 million of them in this country, maybe another 100 million pre-diabetic, suddenly pre-diabetics without any symptoms, no angina or nothing, they grab their chest and they die. Quite common. So we need to diagnose people in pre-diabetes and diabetes very early. We're diagnosing people about stage 4 diabetes. Yes, diabetes is metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, hyperinsulinemia. Stage 4 is type 2 diabetes. Stage 5 is amputations, blindness, heart attacks, and strokes. In this country, we're diagnosing people at stage 4. We need to run 2-hour glucose tolerance tests starting at a very young age. We start testing people seriously with this starting at age 35. It needs to be way before that. When people grab their chests and die at age 40, you think it started at 39? It started, heart disease begins at age 2. Yes, it was proven in Begalusa's study, 40 years, every child that died, they autopsied them, they could get permission. They found fatty streak starts at age 2. But the way I'm speaking through epigenetics, you know it starts even before that. Okay, so I recommend yearly blood tests for everybody starting at age 2. If we did that, we would catch people very early in the stages of their disease process. Could be corrected through a little exercise, 5-pound weight loss is some darn thing, and we maybe a little bit more. But we would stop so much chronic disease. We're diagnosing people too late. We need to know, for example, your very low density LDL. Just run through an NMR test, nuclear magnetic resonance test. Odds are your provider won't order that. He'll order an HbA1c, but HbA1c goes up. That's the combination of sugar and the protein in the blood. That goes up late in the disease process. We need to know your serum insulin, maybe a 2-hour glucose tolerance test. When that's up, your blood sugar may be normal. Then we caught you very early. We can stop it, prevent you, and reverse, and keep the tremendous amount of disease off your back. So I wrote a book called The Golden Opportunity. It's on Amazon. I suggest you get it. It's easy to read. Then I wrote the next one called Fructose, the Evil Twin. Remember, I told you what fructose does? It's an evil twin. The chemical formula of glucose, 6H12O6, fructose, C6H12O6. Same chemical formula, but one's a hexagon, one's a pentagon, so the body recognizes them differently. Things that in the body that are important are either hexagons or pentagons, because that's how they slide through the metabolism of it. But when we eat genetically modified foods, they're not pentagons or hexagons, and our bodies are reacting to it, causes chronic disease. That was a mouthful, but very interesting, isn't it? I mean, it's very interesting. So what we eat, our bodies react to it through biomathematics, epigenetically. I recommend vegetables and fruits and beans. I don't recommend much meat because it's been genetically changed. So I recommend a nutrient-dense diet, vitamins, minerals, full of phytochemicals. No diet, because your appetite will turn off. Those phytochemicals will turn your appetite off. It's right in Dr. Furman's book. I agree. When I go to his conferences, and I eat 100% this way, man, after 3 days, and I love the food, okay, my appetite's turned off. I've never experienced why I had no appetite. But when you eat nutrient-dense food, after a while, your appetite goes way down, and that's really neat. So I called my way of eating flexitarian, 80% high-based vegetable, and 20% meat and nuts, and I exercise every day because I have a little more time now. I stopped neurosurgery last year, so hour and a half a day. Who's got that? But half hour a day. Give me a half hour. Walk, dance in place, whatever. Lift some light weights 3 times a week. Light weights repetitively to keep your body strong. Every pound of muscle on your body eats up 50 calories a day if you don't even use that muscle. So build a little muscle mass is important. And we lose some over the years, so exercise is important. Another thing I recommend is that you learn to cook. Maybe 30% of the American people know how to cook. And half of those are not telling you the truth, we found out when it was studied. What percent of the people exercise regularly? Some say 50%. Well, I think most say 10, 15%. That's not even true because they followed them around, found out it's 3.5%. That's right in Dr. David Katz's book. Yeah, that's very interesting. Let's talk about your DNA a little bit. Remember I said 98% of your DNA is junk DNA that epigenetically directs enzymatic activity throughout your body, which can be influenced by what you eat, what you breathe, how active you are in your social situation and your stress. And the DNA in the helix is like a zipper. Just visualize a zipper. That's really, the 2 helix, remember the 2 strands? We talked about the 2 chromosomes, but the ladders are the DNA that you see between us, like a zipper. And each cell in your body has 6 billion base pairs. That means AGCT, they'll take 2 of those, thiamine, cysteine, arginine, and they form pairs, and they're the messengers of your proteins. So like I said, it's like Lego. Few pieces, a lot of design. RNA is the protein messenger. We mentioned that already. The other day I went to Michigan and talking about good DNA. I went to a concert by Tony Bennett, 88 years old, 3rd row. I sat there, and the next morning I got up early. I write my books early. I go in a coffee shop, and who sits down next to me, his whole band. I spoke to his daughter, half hour perhaps, and then I saw Tony Bennett walking down the hall. Man, 88 years old. He was just going, beautiful shape. He never missed a word. All these songs that he produced that night, we could speak up. I went New York, San Francisco. He just sang it, bang. I realized he practiced them probably 5,000 times, but the brain was working good. His body is working good. And I asked her daughter how long he's going to do that. She said as long as he possibly can. And I hope he makes it to 100. What beautiful music. And music was healing. It made me feel good. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak to the whole band. It was very interesting. A Rett syndrome, which is they demonstrated in mice where the mice are severely neurologically disabled, and they found if they changed the diet, they induced it by a poor diet, and then they changed the diet to a good diet, you know what? Rett syndrome went away. Wow, what great news. In other words, they were able to change the genetic expression in an animal. We now know it's in a human. Remember I told you about the two people I have who lost 150 pounds that looked like movie stars? They've been genetically changed. Remember the latest paper on cancer, metastatic breast cancer? They found out cancer's a sugar feeder, okay? The low sugar diet, exercise regularly, for example. that they were able to increase the survival rate, increase the spontaneous cure rate, your Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines, your lymphatic system, 600,000 miles of lymphatic system in your body can be retrained because it's full of DNA through how much we exercise, how much we eat. Let's face it, when we're exercising, we're pumping a lymphatic system which doesn't have a heart, okay? But you make it move when you're exercising, or you get a lymphatic massage all over your body. We make the lymphatic system clear the body of cancer cells and a bad DNA and replace it with good DNA. So don't throw in the towel if you get metastatic cancer. I think perhaps our cancer providers need to speak a little more positively. I read a book by Dr. LaShan, 50 years he practiced this, and proved that he could double the lifespan, increase the spontaneous cure rate of cancer patients through improving their, and he didn't know a thing about epigenetics, okay? But it's right in his book. I read it. I read it. And I've written a book actually called The Mind in Cancer. It's on Amazon. You're welcome to read it. So I just don't give up on patients, okay? We need to do some positive thinking because it affects the Army, Navy, and the Air Force in the body. If we took our DNA and unraveled it and stretched it, even one of our cells, it would go to the moon and back 5,000 times. That's how long your DNA strands are. That's kind of interesting fact. And really it operates like a Christmas tree. You get the chromosomes in the middle and the branches, and how we can, through methylation, through histones, turn on and off our genes, for example. Also, a mousetrap, an old game. It's kind of like that too, when our genes pass through and now then they slide and they hit by a ball and they get hit in the foot. I mean, this is how our genes exist, but through epigenetics, we can have tremendous effect on our genes. Addiction, they found, I mean, let's face it, you know what the molecular difference between cocaine and sugar is? One molecule. Wow! One molecule. That's how close. So I debated someone on TV one time, Emily Bowles, I think, on this very show, what's more addictive, food or sugar? She said sugar. I think she won the debate that night, actually. But anyway, it's close. And the point is, a lot of us eat so much sugar, we're addicted to it. We can be addicted to salt to a point too, but not as badly into fat a bit. But sugar is the main guy. That's the main guy, and you see why. It's genetically so much similar. And schizophrenia, they found a mental disease, a serious mental disease, for example, has been found when you study the families. There's a pretty good epigenetic relationship. They named all these diseases and what the chances of there being associated between epigenetics and genetic structure. Schizophrenia is high on the list, and that's called concordance studying. Is it related genetically, epigenetically, and they formed a graph out of that. Remember, we spoke about cancer and epigenetics. So it is a lot easier to do research and to have some effect on the patients through epigenetic studies. There's certain diseases, certainly totally determined through mutations in your genes, but that's very low. That's very low. Most of the changes are epigenetically, and we have to get that out there. The money is in gene research. There's not as much money in epigenetic research. It's the epigenetic research we need to fund tremendously because we can really help the patients. And so cancer is a sugar feeder. We've mentioned that enough times. And so I say, let's give tissue, your epigenetics, a chance to fight your cancer, because that's something we can really affect. Maybe on occasion more than chemicals or radiation. Do they do triple blind studies to see the effects of the three? Never heard of one. So this is important. It can't just be about chemicals and radiation. It also has to be about epigenetics. Those three. I'm going to use those three on you to try to cure you of your condition. Let's give a message of hope instead of a message of death. How long I get to live? 3 months. Well, odds are that's how long you will live. We can always say it is not looking good, but I'm going to do everything I can to help you, to modify you. I don't have to use the word, but I'm saying epigenetically, positive thinking, music, dancing, exercise, proper nutrition, a big hug to try to help you. I did it, and I think I helped a lot of people, actually, although I'm not a specialist in that field, but I'm trying to get the information out to this field. Let's speak about youth and epigenetics a little bit. These changes of epigenetics have a lot more to do about youth, young people. It has a lot more effect. So what we're feeding our youth in the schools, the food we're feeding them is critical. But when I look at the government's plate, you know, what's it full? It's full of milk products, which after age 2, milk should not be consumed because of the protein structure. In the case in the milk structure, type 1 diabetes is much higher in people, children do, drink milk. Cancer rates are high in children who drink milk. My friend Dr. Varula, running a pediatric practice, teaches the way that I speak, and he finds the amount of illnesses of the patient that he has is the same. The amount of illnesses are contracting in his office. The amount of asthma, allergy reactions, skin diseases, cancer rates are going down. Talk to him, Dr. Varula. He's serious about this like I am. So children, we have a lot more genetic effects. So what are we speaking about? It's like a play. It's like a play. The genes are the director, okay? They have tremendous influence. The proteins are the actors, okay? Remember, they affect the proteins. They're the actors in this play. And the biochemicals are the stage hands, okay? It's like a play. So let me tell you something interesting fat too. We talk about sugar already. Nature doesn't make bad fats. If the fat comes from nature, it's healthy. Remember, we have essential fatty acids. We need them because they are the eicosanoids, which are the essential fatty acids that jump from cell to cell. In evolution, living things did not have, before us, did not have lungs or hearts. So how do they communicate? Through the essential fatty acids, the eicosanoids that jump from cell to cell. The omega-3s, the omega-6s. The omega-3s are the anti-inflammatory, omega-6s are pro-inflammatory. We need some in both. There should be a 1-to-1, 2-to-1 ratio. What are we eating? 20-to-1, 30-to-1. We're eating the mad, sad, toxic American diet. To me, I think fat, salt, and sugar should be taxed heavily. The money applied to health teaching to turn this epidemic. Ebola killed, 6 people in this country? What's the real epidemic going on here? What we're eating. That's the epidemic. And somebody politically needs to stand up and say it. I'm glad we have an Ebola czar, but let's have a czar on proper nutrition that's willing to take on Congress, who support fat, salt, and sugar with tax money to make it cheaper for us to buy, to kill ourselves. That's happening. I'm not just kidding you. It's all over the books. But remember, if it comes from nature, nature doesn't make bad fats. If we made it, it can be a bad fat, like the CAFO farms, the ponds where we are growing fish. With 90% of the fish you're eating comes from a pond. Ask the waiter, where's this from? I always do. I always do it. You know, say it nicely. And so in epigenetics are the things that we do. Remember I just spoke about the telomeres, and they put tags in there. It's like bookmarking. It's like imprinting, genes silencing, chromosome inactivation, reprogramming, methylation, histones. You see what I'm talking about? We're putting little tags on these telomeres, the messengers, okay, like Post-it notes. Interestingly enough, years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, I met the man who invented them. Yeah. Sitting, he was a man who had a bad injury from an accident, sitting in a wheelchair in Naples, Florida, at a pool. I asked him what he was. He was the inventor of Post-it notes. Yeah, kind of interesting story. And so what am I saying? Your genome can be forgetful, but it can be retrained. It can be retrained to what you eat, how you exercise, what you breathe, what your stresses are, what your socialization activities are. So your inheritance is not necessarily totally permanent. You can change it. You are not what your genes are. You epigenetically, 98% of your DNA is junk DNA. You can change it by your activity. So epigenetics allows for an organism to adapt to their environment. Wow! Write it on your refrigerator. Write it on the wall. An organism can affect the environment and redesign it, but it doesn't change the hardware. Your genes will stay the same, but your epigenetic genes, which is most of your directors of your protein synthesis, enzyme synthesis, you can determine by your activities, okay? And it gives feedback and modifications and cause changes. So whether you participate in your health care is critical, but you must learn. Use this tape, view it frequently. Food is primary. Of all the things that affect us epigenetically, food is primary. They've shown that. And there's no middleman. It's a direct action. It'll happen very quickly. If you eat nutrient-dense food, your body responds quickly. If you're type 2 diabetic, you eat 100% nutrient-dense food, odds are you'll have no type 2 diabetes in 60 days. I stand behind that. Franklin House published a book, The 30-Day Miracle. He thinks he can do it in 30 days. Dr. Furman agrees with that. Dr. Esselstyn agrees with that. Dr. Barnard agrees with that. Dr. Robert Lustig agrees with that. Dr. Richard Johnson agrees with that. Dr. Stephen Sinatra agrees with that. They wrote all famous books, okay, and read them. They're worth reading. They all agree with that. So the junk DNA, there's evidence for language there in your DNA, okay? DNA takes notes. Junk DNA was discovered in 1994, and it has mathematics in it. Remember I spoke about the mathematics of natural food, biomathematics, Fibonacci numbers, the golden triangle. That's real math in what you're eating, and helps determine how good you look. What an opportunity, okay? And so DNA is like a language. In response to the language, your food is genetic information. Dr. Robert Lustig would say. You can watch him on YouTube. He has a great 1-hour lecture on there. Robert Lustig, Lustig, Fat Chance is his famous book. So genes are not written in stone, okay? Ancient tribes. Remember when you read about the ancients and what they put in the literature, coming to the islands off of Florida, how beautiful the people were. Remember he spoke about their beauty, because they were eating natural foods. They were symmetrical. They were beautiful people, and they described them in great detail. And there's proof to what I'm speaking about, okay? Then we talk about dynamic symmetry, okay? Nature's desire for beauty, it's based on mathematics, okay? Then Marquardt, remember, talked about the perfect face and the symmetry of it, the mathematics of it. It's based in nature. It's based in nature. Very interesting. And we speak about these Fibonacci numbers based in nature, and we put in architecture. It's in our body. So, and remember, nature doesn't make bad fats. If you eat natural fats, they're healthy. Guacamole, it's healthy. Okay, it's the bad fats you want to watch out for. Margarine is one molecule from plastic, okay? When they hydrogenate vegetable oils, they make margarine, they heat it to high temperature. It's one molecule away from plastic. Hey, that's a good one. Sugar is one molecule away from cocaine, okay? And so I think I've, given you some information here how important it is that you must participate in your health care. that you indeed can avoid most of the illness in your life when you look at Dr. David Katz's book, 35 Years Public Health Official. A very nice book to read, Disease Proof. Where he's saying that 93% of type 2 diabetes, which is complicated by heart attacks and strokes and autoimmune disease, increased rates of cancer, tremendous rates of arthritis. See, sugar combines with proteins and insulin is deposited in the hips and knees and your joints. And that's the reason you see so many hip and knee replacements in type 2 diabetics, because the sugar and insulin and the proteins have been deposited in their joints and they freeze up. So I recommend that you eat an 80% plant diet, a flexitarian diet. You can look at Cashman Mind, CashmanHealth.com, print down my Reversing Type 2 Diabetes lecture. Please send us your emails. I have many other lectures, and they're posted on there. Come to them, please, and help us. I'm trying to change a community because what does physician mean? Teacher. I'm a teacher. And these things we're doing for nothing. And I'm doing for nothing to try to get you healthier because we love you. We care about you. But I need some feedback. Join us in trying to change the community. I even teach it in the churches through the Daniel Plan or any church. I don't care what church it is or what denomination it is, because I think spirituality can be part of healing. Some people need spirituality in God to honor their body, to change. I totally respect that. I promote that. Please join me in this effort. Invite me to your church or your synagogue or your mosque or whatever. I gladly speak there to teach about wellness. I'm a wellness doctor. I'm Dr. Wellness, okay? And I will do this probably the rest of my life. Incidentally, look at YouTube. I have 77 lectures on there. Fat, salt, sugar, even one on marijuana, what the science of it is, sitting disease. That's an interesting concept. Have a look at that too. You can really fully educate yourself and watch some of our other shows, and come to once a month I give a lecture at Lutheran Hospital on stopping, preventing, reversing type 2 diabetes, because it's so prevalent in this community. 1 out of 3 people is pre-diabetic or diabetic. 1 in 2 will be diabetic probably in 10 years. So join us in that, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. Namaste. Send me a book. I'll read it. I'll meet you at Starbucks. Discuss it with you. I'm open to discussion. Your things you'd like to tell me, you don't agree with. And this information is from me, from myself. I take responsibility for it. If you look at our website, you'll see a lot of books that that you could read. I also will put some CD-ROMs on there, like Reversing Type 2 Diabetes. You could listen to those while you're driving the car. And again, I love you all. Join us in this effort. Thank you very much. Namaste.